Yeah, so I came up with the perfect French toast recipe, just off the top of my head.
That sounds so good.
Nailed it. And yeah, it's been delicious. I've had it the last 3 days. What's happening right now?
What is this?
Who put this crap on our gym? Guys, what's going on here?
What's all the lights?
Wait, this is the CSN3M Podcast?
I think it is. Is it Mindsets, myth busting, and mentoring podcast?
Yeah, the 3 essential M's.
Wait, is that the podcast that's sponsored by Case-Specific Meal Prep?
It sure is. The best meal prep delivery service in Pittsburgh.
Wow, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Definitely check that
out. I mean,
out.
while we're here,
talk over some
do you
stuff.
want to just do this?
Let's make it happen.
All right,
Let me
cheers.
get a little coffee. Cheers. It's not an energy drink, but
It'll do.
I drank all mine before we even got here, so.
What can we talk about?
I mean, we could talk about my muscles.
That's actually a really good idea.
All right.
So let's just dive right into, didn't you just do a bodybuilding show?
I did just do a bodybuilding show. I did the OCB Yorton Cup, which is kind of their like Super Bowl of bodybuilding for that organization. And I got my head kicked in. It was a cool experience. So.
You know what we forgot to do?
What?
Introduce ourselves, because we're taking over the show today.
Introduce
So I'm Allison Wade, here with
Jeremiah Rowe, head strength coach for Case-Specific Athletics and professional natural bodybuilder. Which is
so while we have you here, I want to run through the whole story.
All right.
How did it start?
All right, so my bodybuilding journey started in college. I was originally playing ice hockey at Slippery Rock University, and after a semester of being on a drinking team with a hockey problem, I kind of got tired of it and wanted to try something different. It just wasn't competitive, I wasn't enjoying it. So I dropped off the team, and I was lifting every day anyway, and so Slippery Rock had a bodybuilding club, and they had a show that they hosted each year, a competition. My freshman year was the first time they offered physique in that competition, and so I kind of just, on a whim, jumped into it. It gave me something to train for, and never looked back after that first show.
That's awesome. So would you say, like, leading up to college, I mean, I assume you played sports and things like that, but had you ever really been involved in weightlifting much?
Well, I actually started lifting weights when I was in 6th grade. Obviously, as all guys start out, it is to get girls. And so I always liked the aesthetics of weightlifting, and that was around the same time that I started playing ice hockey, and so it did become a sports performance thing as well. But I did. I lifted all through high school and into college, and it was just a good outlet for pent-up aggression.
That's awesome. So obviously in the sport of bodybuilding, there's a lot that goes into it. And I think the science has evolved a lot in terms of, you know, what you should be eating, like leading up to that show, how you can kind of look that optimal peak physique when you step on stage. So you step into your first show with no experience.
Oh, yeah.
What did that diet look like? And I guess, did you use any resources in what you should be doing?
No. So the first competition, like I said, I was a hockey player, and we had your meal pass for the dining hall up at school. And so my meal plan that I followed was every morning I would have an egg white omelet, and I don't think I even had toast with it. I think I just had like an omelet. No, I had an omelet and a bowl of oatmeal. That's what it was. And then for the other 2 meals throughout the day, I would just get an enormous salad, and I would put all the veggies, all the toppings on it, some nuts, some like dried cranberries, stuff like that, and oil and vinegar, and I would put ripped up deli turkey meat on it. And I ate that 2 times a day for like 3 months, or 3 times a day for 3 months. And
nothing else in between?
No, I mean, at that point, again, my knowledge of nutrition was zero. And so I would, like, here and there, I remember one time in particular that I was in a roommate's room and they had this big box of Cheerios. And I was like, these are healthy. And so I just remember eating handfuls of Cheerios. and I probably ate half the box. And at that point, like knowing what I know now, my body was extremely deprived of carbohydrates. And so I probably benefited greatly from eating those Cheerios that time. But it was just like, eat clean foods, whatever that means. And
it sounds
definite
like you just
extreme restriction.
put together a bunch of foods that you knew were healthy and you're like, this should work.
I got really lean from it. I was probably like sickly lean, but I did get lean from it. And a funny side story to that is actually that like for months after that show, turkey made me sick. If I ate, and I still liked it, but my body had some adverse reaction to the amount of turkey that I was eating. And like up to a couple months after, if I ate like any turkey whatsoever, whether it was like deli meat or actual like carved turkey, I would get like extremely nauseated. And so we changed the approach after that.
So how long ago was that first show?
That was in 2013.
Do you remember about what you weighed at that time?
I think I got on stage probably around like 170, 175 at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And point of reference, you weigh roughly now?
Now or competition now?
We'll say competition now.
Okay, so I got down to 183 prior to that competition, which was like a dehydrated, really low. I probably like comfortably 185 to 190 on stage at that point.
Okay, so you've grown significantly.
Yeah.
Over that time.
Thankfully.
So, first show, you're all into the bodybuilding, physique lifestyle. Let's talk about like your training approach, and then we'll kind of get to some of your other shows, but let's just talk about like the way that you primarily weightlift to build muscle, to kind of keep you competitive on stage.
Okay, so what always benefited me the most with weight training as far as muscle growth was high volume. And looking back now, I wish I would have incorporated more heavy weights, but I did a whole bunch of, not lightweight, but lower weight, high rep drop sets and supersets and like complete to failure training all the time. And what that does is maximizes the breakdown of the muscle tissue, which allows it to build back bigger and stronger, assuming that you're adequately fueling your body for that. And so, again, it will help blow the muscle up and make it bigger, but it doesn't necessarily make you stronger. Looking back now, I'm far weaker than I look like I should be for my size and muscle, muscle tissue amount. And it's because of the way I trained for all these years. And so, leading into this last competition, like prior, when I was still putting on weight and trying to build up for it, I went more with a powerlifting approach where it was like super heavy weight, super low rep. And my body reacted well to it, but it neglected a lot of the accessory work that I needed to be doing to prepare for a bodybuilding show. And so it ended up that my upper body was too small. And then that was some feedback that I got from a lot of the judges, because I have really big legs and my it overshadows my upper body. And so now I'm getting back into the bodybuilding approach, like some more a middle ground. Heavy weight on certain movements that you're really focusing on strength, but then all the accessory stuff, the burnout, the drop sets, all that. Really trying to beat myself into the ground.
Yeah, so how many days a week are you training?
Currently 5 or 6. I have not decided yet, because this is my first week of training back after the competition. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to be able to consistently do Saturdays. Yeah. And I always have a hard time with training on the weekends. Sunday is an off day, that's for the Lord. But
yeah, so like a 5 to 6 days.
5 to 6 days,
lifting pretty heavy.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, I want to eventually get to this past competition that you did, but I kind of want to end with that and then talk about next steps.
Yeah.
So let's go backwards a little bit. You did your first show. How did you do in that show, I guess? And then let's talk about the next couple shows that you've done since that first.
There's been a loss. We'll burn through them. But the first show was at the Slippery Rock bodybuilding competition. I did physique, which is like the board shorts and just look pretty up on stage. I placed second. After that, I was kind of hooked on the sport, and so I wanted to jump into a real competition. So I went and competed at the NPC Pittsburgh show, which is an enormous show. and I got annihilated. Like, I think I got like 15th in my class at that show. And again, I was still following the same meal plan of like extreme deficit, and I just looked like sickly and tiny on stage. And so after that, took a year off, put on a little bit of size, and during that year, I met Andrew through a mutual friend of ours. Shout out to Rob. And so he actually gave me a real meal plan and a real approach to a competition. The following year, competed at the Slippery Rock again, got second again. After that, I think it was a month or two later, competed at the Pittsburgh Fitness Expo. They had a physique show out in Monroeville, and I won that one. And it was supposed to have like sponsorships and stuff with it. All of it fell through. It ended up being a complete joke, but it was cool to win that show. Still doing physique at this point. That is 2013, 2014. It was 2014.
Okay.
2014, later in the year, in October, competed at the NPC Natural Northern USA in Lakewood, Ohio. This show was a complete train wreck. It's hilarious. You were there. Mm-hmm. Got lost backstage, missed my call to get like pumped up for stage, missed my meal timing. So was late getting into line, went out, was not pumped up, not oiled up, anything, looked horrendous. Went out, did my thing. The same thing happened in the evening show. So this is for prejudging. Same exact thing happens in the evening.
Oh no.
And they actually scratched my name off the roster because I didn't show up in time. So I at the last second jump in line and go out on stage. I'm standing there looking like garbage again. And they read through the competitors' numbers and names, and they go right past me. They just did not read my name at all. So I'm out on stage in front of hundreds of people, big stage, big venue, and I'm standing there. I'm just kind of okay, and I walked off, and it was done. And so that show was a train wreck. 2015, competed in Ultimate Physique Championships with another NPC show in Allentown. And then a week later, competed in a physique show in St. Augustine, Florida. A friend of mine was living down there at the time. He was competing in a show. It happened to be a week later. So I just planned a trip, flew down there and competed with him. I don't remember how I placed at those shows, but...
But you've had a lot of experience competing.
Yeah.
The diet started to evolve, obviously.
Correct. Yeah, all these shows I'm working with Andrew, and that was the one in St. Augustine was the last time I did physique, because 2017, classic physique came to be a thing, which was old school bodybuilding. So I switched, did a classic physique show in the NPC in 2017, and I placed third or fourth or something like that. And at that point, I'm still competing NPC, and I'm competing naturally. And at this point, I kind of had to acknowledge that I'm never going to do well in the sport in a untested organization as a natural athlete. And so I switched over to the OCB, and
which is a natural bodybuilding.
Yeah, OCB is a natural bodybuilding organization popular in the US. And the first show I did, I went in for classic physique, but there ended up being only 2 competitors. And so the other kids switched over to physique, and I switched to bodybuilding at the last second. And actually ended up winning that show, so I won my pro card. And that was 2018. That's the last time I competed prior to this last competition.
Yeah, so you've kind of bounced around, been in different classes, and
I've been all over the place, yeah.
Yeah, which is cool because it allows you to probably understand the sport more, what the judges are looking for, and then obviously how you can continue to change and evolve your body into, what they're looking for essentially.
Correct.
So, got your pro card. We had COVID happen, took some time off from competing. Came back. What I want to really dig into is just kind of summarize your last prep for this most recent show. I felt like I was around you a lot. I saw a lot of your meals. You started dieting, I think, around July, end of July-ish.
Sure.
Was that when it was, right?
It was 13 weeks, I know that.
Okay, so 13 weeks. Let's run through that progression of how that diet started into leading up to this show, that last week, if you could kind of summarize it in a broad way.
I can try. So I started that prep. It was 13 weeks. way longer than what I normally do for a competition diet. I was too fat. You were there whenever we took my first body fat with Andrew, and he was kind of like, yeah, we're a little bit behind on this. And
so you did some growing in the off season.
Yeah, we did some growing right there. And so it was longer than I wanted it to be, but whatever, it's not a big deal. But we did a 2,400 calorie diet, which I think at the time I was eating 3,500, so it dropped pretty substantially. And I mean, it was nothing crazy, but it was, again, at this point I'm working with Andrew, I'm working with a dietitian, so it's intelligent. I have the actual macro numbers to hit, and I'm not just completely depriving myself and starving. And so my staples are always egg whites, toast, oatmeal for breakfast. I was having a turkey sandwich at some point throughout the day after that, and then your classic chicken, rice, and broccoli a couple times after that, and then dinner. I guess at the end of the night, I usually finish it up with egg whites and toast again. That was something I always really liked during my diet. So
yeah. So you weren't really eating. You were eating a lot, again, healthy foods, but you had at least a little more variety again.
Correct. From one turkey sandwich a day does not make me nauseated. That's good. Good information to have now. Yeah.
So obviously, then as that prep continues, your weight's dropping. We had a few times where your weight was kind of holding steady.
Ooh, yeah. Interesting story there.
So yeah, how did you kind of break through some of those little what we'd say a plateau kind of?
Okay, so it would depend on the specific circumstances in which it happened. So I actually kept track on my Instagram for this prep. It was the first time I ever did this. I took my weight every day, except for one, which still haunts me. I forgot. I took my weight every day just to watch the progression of the weight loss as I went throughout the diet. And it was so crazy. My weight would stay the same for 4 or 5 days. Like to the 10th of the decimal, it would stay exactly the same. And then it would drop down. And then it would shoot back up. And then it would drop down.
And this is while you were tracking your calories.
Every single calorie is tracked in.
So I think you doing that, just to kind of piggyback off of that, was a lot of people were really it opened their eyes to understanding that weight loss isn't always this perfect linear approach, even when you control for everything.
And that was exactly it too. I wanted to make a point that my clients and people all the time anyway, they are so obsessive about keeping track of their weight and always knowing what they weigh. I haven't lost any weight. I did that. I was eating 1,100 calories short of what I was used to and still not consistently losing weight. And it was bouncing around, and we acknowledged at some point that my tendency to save a bunch of my calories and eat them at the end of the night was inhibiting me, and so we kind of changed that up. And then we could talk about refeeds too, where you get to a point where your metabolism kind of slows down to match your calorie intake, and so you need to give your body kind of a jolt to get it kicked up again. So we have a day where I might eat an extra 100 grams of carbs, I think was about what we were doing on average, once a week. And so you have an extra 100 grams of carbs, now your body suddenly thinks, oh, okay, we're being fed more again, we can start cooking a little bit more. And so you'd see I would eat 100 extra grams of carbs this day, and then my weight would drop 3 pounds the next day. Really, really interesting to watch it day to day as an experiment, not as a lifestyle.
Yeah. And that's the biggest point I want to make of this is, people look at that and they think that is the epitome of health, right? This is how you should always be eating. So while you're in prep, I mean, how many social situations did you miss out on? You couldn't eat, you were tired, you were going to bed earlier.
Yeah, early on I definitely allowed myself some leniency on that. At a point where I knew I could, it wasn't going to actually inhibit me and make me look unconditioned on stage. But as the diet went on, probably 6+ weeks in, I'm not doing anything. I don't want to be around people. I'm just constantly half asleep and constantly thinking about food. When's my next meal? I'm watching the clock. I have an hour and a half until I can start eating that. And it's a very obsessive, restrictive lifestyle that I absolutely want nothing to do with outside of training for a competition.
Yeah, no, I just like to bring that point up because, as you said, and as I think a lot of people will compare, if we look at that picture of you on stage, it's competing for that sport, but outside of that prep for that show,
It's not healthy.
Yeah, that's not how you're eating on a day-to-day basis, right?
Correct. Yeah, and Allison would be the first one to tell you how miserable I am to be around at that point, because in the world in general, I would say we associate aesthetic looks with health. And me, like you said, being shredded down and super lean on stage, the last week before that show, I cut out like 90% of my training clients, or moved them around so that they were like in a 2-hour window in the morning or at some point in the day, where I could do as little as possible and just be laser focused on everything else, with like food and getting ready for the competition and all the stuff that goes into that. I didn't have the mental capacity to even answer emails. Like I stopped answering my emails like a week and a half, 2 weeks out, because I just I didn't want to read it. I could not process it in my mind. So when you see these competitors, like that's what I want to look like, you have to realize that, particularly in a natural organization, it's not sustainable for most people. You have your people who do stay lean naturally and like always have that kind of look to them. I'm not one of them.
Well, like when you're stepping on stage, your body fat was around, what would you say?
It depends on the metrics that you're using, right? So we used skin fold, 7-side skin fold, and that had me around like 3 to 4%.
Right.
Which there's 3% margin of error, I think, on skin folds, and so that's not necessarily that I'm 3% body fat. But it's a consistent metric that we can compare. Like when I started, that I was 13%. So
yeah. So I think in just saying, okay, hey, you're below or roughly around 3% at that stage, or on stage, right? But that's not healthy for you to maintain that
I feel like
the
garbage.
rest of the year.
Absolute garbage whenever I'm like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about, just kind of run us through how this last show went, and then let's also talk about like next steps and really like where you're looking to go from here.
Right. So like we said, this was my pro debut. It was my first time in a professional stage. And I isolate myself a lot whenever I am between shows, because I kind of train on my own, and I usually take a really long off season. And so I put these high expectations for how I'm going to do on myself. And so I went into the show assuming I was going to place top 5, like without much issue. And I got like 7th in my class. And immediately out on stage, I could tell the judges weren't even looking at me. They pushed me off to the side. And so, underperformed greatly on that. And having talked to Andrew about it a good bit, we kind of decided that my tendency to take these extremely long off seasons is inhibiting me at this point. So the goal right now is that I'm going to put on as much size as possible and stay relatively lean from now until February. In February, we're going to start dieting again. We're going to try to make it like an 8-week diet that doesn't make me want to die nearly as much. And we're going to run that to a show in April that's in Maine. It's the OCB Pine Tree State something or other. I picked that show because the trophies are Thor hammers. I'm super excited to try to win a Thor hammer. And so, yeah, we're going to work on stage presence a little bit, work on some posing, but really, really try to bulk up the upper body over the next couple months. And not jump into such an enormous show as I did this time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good plan. What does that training, we talked about the number of days, but are you going to kind of keep that more bodybuilding style training to grow that upper body?
Yes, I would say so. It is largely bodybuilding. There's a little bit of an influence of powerlifting in it still, particularly in my legs, because my legs are big. I don't need them to be any bigger, so I'm focusing more on getting them stronger, which in turn, in terms of like squats and deadlifts, is going to help strengthen up my upper back and add some size to it as well. And so heavy on legs, and everything else training twice a week with more volume.
Gotcha. Nice. I think that sounds like you have a good plan. You're feeling good about it.
Yeah.
Any advice you would give to anybody looking to get into the sport, like in terms of like where to start?
Talk to a professional about it. Don't go to a competitor that competed a few times and did half decent and the worst thing I see in bodybuilders is people go to these competitors for meal plans and training programs, and they never come in looking ready on stage. So you need to talk to an actual bodybuilding coach. Find out if you are stage ready. Like, do you have enough tissue to get on stage and do well? And is this person going to give you a real plan that's actually going to have you lean? You want someone who's a little bit tough on you for bodybuilding, because at the end of the day, it's an extreme sport. So you don't want to go on stage looking unconditioned and unprepared for it. You want to make sure that when you get on stage, you're a competitor. You're not just up there because you lost some weight and accomplished a goal. So be prepared for tough love and seek out professional guidance on it. Those are my two big things.
Yeah, no, I think I have definitely seen that, and I think that's where, again, the nutrition and the training, it's so individualized.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where like you look at the way you need to be fed is going to be different from somebody else that's on stage. So
yeah.
What worked for you, if you just went around selling your plan to everybody, they're probably not going to respond the same way as you did.
If you're interested though, reach out to me, say $49.99. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but you actually would be a good coach, right? Paired with registered dietitian, right?
True, yeah. Look out for case-specific aesthetics coming sometime in the future.
That sounds pretty cool. Well, Jeremiah, this was great. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Yeah, it's crazy that this happened to be set up in the gym today.
It really worked out perfect for us.
I'm not mad about it.
All right, well, thanks so much for your time. And you have yourself a good weekend.
You too.
Stay tuned next Monday for a new episode. We'll see what's in store for you.
Probably be way more boring than this, though.
Probably.